Welcome back. Thanks for joining me again as we continue to examine a fictionalized story based on a real murder case involving a 15-year-old youth I once evaluated. Today I want us to focus on how this young person, Raymond Davis, came to believe his world was an unsafe place and how you and I might be similarly guided by what we've been taught to believe. The single element that stood out from my very first interview with this 15-year-old young person was his assertion, "I believe in myself." Once he told me that, I started chewing my cud, so to speak, for several days, and I mulled over the multiple meanings of that simple assertion. You know, we teach kids that healthy self-growth involves believing in their innate goodness. That's well and good, wouldn't you agree with me? But is it possible to push the point too far? Taken to an extreme, instilling high levels of self-confidence can lead a young person to believe that they are special even when common sense says that's not true. Honest and accurate self-belief cannot expand unless difficult personal questions are entertained and considered. When I was a young teenager, about Raymond's age, I wondered about the truths I had been taught during my childhood. Quite frankly, some of the most basic tenets of my upbringing made no sense at all. Here's a case in point. It's kind of sad to say, but the Southern culture that produced my grandfather led him to claim the alleged truth that not all people are created equal. Never mind what Thomas Jefferson once said. In his mind, some folks wore the wrong color of skin and thus were inferior. It was as plain and simple as that in my grandfather's mind. But you know, even as a boy, I felt at least some moderate guilt over my membership in a society that taught that only those of us with preferential physical traits deserve favorable treatment, while the rest of humanity might as well go ahead and brace themselves for a rough life. And that guilt melted into dismay and even disbelief when experience taught me that every single one of my forbidden friends had positive personal qualities. To presume that I have it all right and they needed to be sold on my belief system or else felt awkward at best, even when I was a kid. I was 15 years old when my grandfather died. At age 19, I followed my brother to Texas, where I continue to reside to date. 20 years after leaving my childhood stomping grounds, I returned. You know, it seemed natural that I should then visit my grandfather's old home because that place played no small role in my upbringing. But it struck me hard that the previous life that I lived on that hill in Georgia was but one of many pasts played out on that very same spot of earth. I have something to say about where I came from and what it meant to me. So do you, and so do all the other people who occupy the very same places each of us considers to be unique and special and our very own. Okay, let's fast forward to today. I have a new client. He's 15 years old. His name is Raymond Davis, and he's committed a murder. One of my responsibilities is to figure out how he makes sense of his memories, the same as I try to do. I must determine what he thinks, that is, what he believes. Psychologists refer to beliefs as cognitions. It's kind of a cool word when you consider it, cognition. Drop that term on your friends and neighbors and they'll think you're smart. Back in the 1960s, a researcher named Aaron Beck developed an intervention approach aptly referred to as cognitive therapy. The aim there is to help people uncover and then modify dysfunctional beliefs, alter your belief structure, and transform the way you live and feel and behave. It sounds simple, yes, but it requires a lot of candor and humility to be effective. During my second visit with my young killer client, I thought I would delve into his belief system. "Raymond," I asked, "what do you think about adults in general?" "I don't hang out with them," he said. "I don't know. They make the rules. You're supposed to do what they say. If you don't, you're busted." Stuff like that. "So adults make the rules," I asked. "So that means they're in charge?" "Yeah," he said. "If you don't do what adults say, you're in trouble. Is that right?" I asked. "Yes, sir." "Yes, sir" has such a nice tone to it, doesn't it? "When you fail to do what adults want, you're punished," I asked for clarification. "If you get caught," Raymond said. "If you get caught. So does that mean you can't be honest with adults because you don't want to get caught doing wrong?" "Hey," Raymond said, "You asked me something, I'll tell you." I kind of laughed and said, "No, I don't mean it that way, Raymond. A guy who gives blunt answers is just being a straight shooter. That doesn't necessarily mean he's being open." Raymond smiled. He liked being known as a straight shooter, no pun intended. But he knew as well as I did that somebody can be honest and still hide all manner of thoughts and emotions. "Raymond," I said, "you told me something the other day I want to ask you more about. Remember when you told me you believe in yourself? What'd you mean?" Raymond stuck his chest out forward just like he did when he made that first statement and said, "I don't doubt myself." Doubt. Now there's an interesting and curious word. When one expresses doubt about the self, it seems that they may be revealing a lack of confidence. Maybe that's what Raymond meant. By asserting that he believes in himself and does not doubt, maybe he was intending to reveal the strength of his character. He missed on that one. Follow me. Doubt is actually a natural response to questions about truth. Yet we often convey to one another that those people who doubt are in a state of decay. Yet without doubt, it's difficult for a person to make a commitment, at least one that he owns. When a kid swallows the party line, he's not thinking for himself. His thoughts belong to someone else. His parents, his friends, a street gang, the rule makers, the powers that be, wherever and from whomever those thoughts derived, they're not his own, they're not individual. Doubt pushes people to higher levels of questioning. Personal growth stagnates if there's no haggling between the things we think we know and the things that confuse us. Raymond hid from doubt by proclaiming confidence in himself. And in so doing, he was also hiding from introspection and by extension from personal growth. Does that make sense? Let's look closely at the relationship between certainty and doubt. People are motivated to a large degree by their cognitions, by their beliefs. What we believe dictates our actions. Not all beliefs run parallel to one another. That is, sometimes people encounter conflicting beliefs. Tension then mounts. The discomfort caused by that tension can push a person to consider alternatives. Answers emerge, and that relieves the internal conflict that doubts create. Once the strain is over, the person feels momentary peace until new doubts emerge. And so the cycle of doubt repeats itself again and again. And actually, that can be a good thing. Let's go back to Raymond. Early in his childhood, this young man figured out that adults were in charge. That belief, that cognition, was literally and figuratively hammered into his awareness. Consider these 5 points Raymond learned during his childhood. One is that a presumed incapacity and or unwillingness of adults to consider his point of view meant he was in trouble all the time, and especially he was in trouble if he disagreed with the status quo. Second belief he developed, being in trouble meant he was going to be punished, which led to a third cognition or belief. If that punishment was severe, and it often was, he knew that he should avoid honesty, which led to another cognition or belief. It was important for him to hide honest feelings about behind a devastatingly tough exterior, one that adults couldn't penetrate, and one that he didn't want to discard, which led to another belief. To soothe unspoken fears of being controlled by adults who dismissed his point of view and repeatedly punished him, Raymond felt the need for him to be in charge. Armed with that shoddy belief system, Raymond shot and killed a man. See where I'm going here? Dissecting a teenage killer's belief system and applying that to his horrific conduct creates a fine line between excusing his action and understanding the anatomy of a particularly heinous event. Raymond said he didn't doubt himself. You know, maybe the man he killed would not have become his victim had the young boy been encouraged to ask questions about himself. You know, the highest court in the land has historically held that before a jury decides a murderer's fate, that person is entitled to present any and all appropriate information to explain the mangled and twisted reasons contributing to his crime. Those rulings support the notion that what and why a person thinks is important. You know, a knee-jerk reaction most of us have after hearing of a killing or, frankly, any other unjustifiable act is to ask, what in the world is that person thinking? I don't know about you, but if the Supreme Court affirms that it's very important to answer that question, I take that as a not-so-subtle nudge for me and you to do just that. I need to think the way a boy who killed somebody thinks. Yet we, self-included, tend to assume, that is, we tend to believe that people like Raymond should think like you and I do. But, too often the John Does and the Lee Carters of the world skip the step of considering what motivates the Raymond Davises of the world to act the way they do. We dismiss and even discourage the role of doubt in our individual and collective growth. Raymond staunchly believed that adults make the rules, that they're in charge, that people who disagree get punished, and thus it's okay to shoot straight, however that term is defined, and to forcefully take control. People like me suppose Raymond should think the way I do. Thus, we feel compelled to convert his foolish self to our point of view. Inadvertently, though, we might widen the gap that divides us. When I meet and talk to people like Raymond, I inevitably feel like I'm confronting myself at some level. How stubborn am I in my beliefs? How open am I to other people? When was the last time I seriously challenged my beliefs, my cognitions? Do I hold tightly to my belief system simply because it feels right? Am I attracted to letter perfect answers? Answers I think deserve to be written in red ink? Do I change the questions to fit the answers I figuratively hold in my back pocket? Psychological growth can't occur without doubt. I'm not the same person I was 5 years, 15 years, 30 years ago. Raymond will not be the same person he is today in 5 years, 15 years, or 30 years hence. Relationships change. Knowledge expands. Experience happens. Expectations are altered. The world turns. When a person believes he has a firm grasp on the truth, trouble simmers. Certainty can lead to arrogance, or pride, or narrowness of thought, or interpersonal conflict, and personal stagnation. When we take our doubts seriously, though, we discover something quite refreshing about ourselves in relation to others. And that is, we'll never learn all there is to learn about life, because life is too big. But through our doubts, we'll also learn that life is small enough to hold tightly to me and you and Raymond Davis. Balance, Raymond Davis. Life is about balance. Balance, Lee Carter. Balance, John and Jane Doe. Growth is a forever process, a lovingly forever process. What about you? What things are you certain of? Where are your doubts? How does the conflict between certainty and doubt affect you? I'm psychologist Lee Carter. I hope you're enjoying this series as we look inside the soul of a teenage murderer. Maybe, just maybe, we'll learn some valuable lessons about ourselves in the process. That's my hope. I'll look forward to being with you again soon.